Yeah.
So everyone good to go, get cracking?
Yeah.
All good.
Perfect. Okay, so just get everything recording. Excellent. So brilliant, guys. It's great to see everyone here. Number 2 on the podcast with Plymouth Argyle today. So I want to get us started. I just want to go for everybody, and if you can come in and introduce yourselves and explain your role at the club, that would be great. So if we can start with you, Mark, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, so thanks for the day, Chris. Really appreciate you inviting me on. My name's Mark Blackwell. I'm currently assistant manager for the Plymouth Argyle Ladies first team. I'm also head coach for the under-16s girls ADC.
Brilliant stuff. Ryan?
Hi, Chris. Yeah, thanks for having us on again today. So I'm Plymouth Argyle Women's First Team Manager, and I'm also head of women and girls football for Argyle Community Trust and lead coach for the under-14s at the ADC.
Great stuff. Vicky?
Yeah, hi, I'm obviously Vicky Fannin. I've been involved at Argyle kind of on and off since I was a young girl. I'm currently like joint manager of the development team, and I kind of have worked with Ryan and Mark, working with like the transition from the girls coming up into the ladies team.
Excellent stuff. Thank you. And last but not least, Lydia.
Hi, my name's Lydia. I'm currently a player for the Plymouth Argyle first team, and I'm in my second season here. I'm also a student at the University of Exeter as well.
Great stuff. Ideal. Perfect. So I just want to kick off then with, we'll start with you, Lydia, because we got you here. We'll start with you, put you under pressure early doors. So can you just start and give us a little bit of a background into when you first started playing football, what your experiences were to get you to where you are now?
Yeah, so I was playing for a local boys team up until I was about 10 years old, and then I started playing for Gillingham Centre of Excellence, which I think they're now called the Regional Talent Centres. And then I was at Gillingham for about 6 years, and then once I'd finished, got to the end of the Centre of Excellence, I then decided to move to Crystal Palace, just because there seemed to be better opportunities there, and the infrastructure of the club seemed to be a lot better than Gillingham. But then because of work and distance for travelling, I then moved back to Gillingham for 1 season, part of the ladies team, and then I then moved to university down here, so I joined Plymouth. Yeah.
Perfect. I got to unmute myself. Lydia, that was awesome. Thank you. Ryan, do you want to go next? That'd be great to give a little insight of where you started. Cheers, Lydia. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Cheers, Chris. Yeah, so I've been involved in women and girls football for probably the last 4 seasons. So I started coaching 6 years ago. Started at Elberton Villa grassroots team for my son's football team. And then I went and done a university degree at Plymouth Argyle in football development and coaching. Got a job with Plymouth Argyle Community Trust. Was the lead coach at the under-10s at the Girls Advanced Development Centre, whilst I was also coaching the Boys Academy at Plymouth. Done 2 seasons with the under-10s at the ADC, and then I asked to go and coach an older age group, so I went up and became the lead coach at the under-14s. Then the role of head of women and girls came up at the Community Trust, so I applied for that and luckily got the job. So I sort of then become in charge of the whole women and girls programme in Plymouth. So I oversee literally everything from in-school after school clubs into the ADC, obviously, and up to the women's first team. And that's sort of where I am at the minute currently. So I've done my UEFA B licence as well, and looking to push on and do my A licence moving forward.
Great stuff. Brilliant. Vicky?
Oh God, you're going to make me show my age. So I started playing football at school with the boys when I was kind of like 13, 14. And I remember kind of an advert came through school about trialling for the Plymouth Argyle Centre of Excellence for the girls, which is now like the equivalent of the ADC. So I got in it that way. I kind of was at the ADC for a little while. Back when I was about 15, that was the age to become a women's football. Now it's 16. So I played women's football from the age of 15, played for a really long time, like 18 years, kind of then got into coaching. Started my coaching kind of career with a different club, but I've kind of come back to Argyle, kind of where it all began. And I've just kind of really seen like the club evolve. So like when I was first at the Centre of Excellence, there was not really any kind of transition from girls into ladies. It was kind of just, all right, you're 15 now, go and play. Whereas now there's kind of more of a transition, and you get to kind of spend more time in and around the coaching staff that work with the women's team. Yeah, so that kind of just makes the evolution into that game much easier for them.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I want to delve back in a bit. Well, I want to get Mark's take, and then I want to just delve into a little bit of what it's like between when you started playing. And apologies if it shows your age, Vicky. Apologies, but I want to look at the difference between you and Lydia's pathway in a minute, if that's all right. Mark, over to you, mate.
Yeah, so I've probably been coaching for about 10 years now. Specifically with girls, probably I'd say about 5 years. That started off with my local grassroots club. Coaching younger age groups there, and then it's slowly sort of progressed. So I've always sort of coached in the male game, boys game, but I would say the last sort of probably 4 years now, I'd say I've taken it a little bit more seriously in terms of a female game. So that started off, like say, a grassroots club. Then I sort of moved into a little bit more coaching at Argyle, and since probably 2000. What we know, it's 2021. So probably since 2018, I've pretty much done it as like my full-time coaching, if that makes sense. So I've coached boys, but it's been predominant girls since probably 2018. So I work with Devon FA. I coached the Devon Ladies team for a season, and then I worked with Plymouth Argyle uni team, working with the men's and the ladies teams. Then I sort of moved more full-time into working with Argyle Community Trust, and part of that role now is to coach the ADC. So last season it was the under-14s, this season it's the under-16s, and obviously sort of beginning of last season, myself and Ryan moved into the senior setup. So yeah, that's been my sort of journey over the last sort of 5 years. Specifically with women and girls.
Brilliant stuff, mate. Excellent. Ideal. I think it's just good to get a nice background into everybody, and for the people listening, it's going to be different for each of us, isn't it? So it's nice to know where everyone's come into it, when they come into it, and we're going to find out a bit more now about pathways. So let's just get back to, I want to look at this difference in pathways between Vicky and Lydia. So I appreciate, Lydia, you've come down here obviously later on in your life, and I'm sure obviously you're still very young, so you've got plenty more to give. So I know it's going to be very difficult to try and put it into Devon compared to Gillingham, but let's start with Vicky. What sort of things do you see now, Vicky, that are in place that just weren't around and available when you were maybe 1 or 2 years younger?
1 or 2, God, 1 or 2 decades. I think when I was kind of transitioning from the girls' game into the women's game, there was just no kind of step. There was no development. There was kind of, like I said earlier, just well, there you go, you're 15 now, you can go and play. And there was no like support. There were no staffing in place that helped that transition. You know, because it's such a different game. Like, the speed of the game, the pace, the strength, and just everything is so different, and you're not prepared for that. I think the biggest thing is you're not mentally prepared. And I remember being so terrified playing against like big, strong women, and I was kind of like a bit out of my depth. But I think what I see now, particularly from working with Ryan and Mark and the girls that we've got coming through, is there's so much more in place. You know, like girls now are getting sports science sessions, they're getting S&C sessions, they're getting match analysis. You know, they're getting sponsorship, they're getting funding, they're getting all this different opportunities compared to what I had 20 years ago. And it's amazing to see like how the game has grown. Like if you think back when I was playing, the Women's Super League hadn't even been formed. Like that was only formed in 2010. So there's so many kind of strides now in the women's game that have made it so much easier for young girls to just get the best opportunities possible.
Brilliant. Cheers, Vicky. Okay. So Lydia, just based on what Vicky's just mentioned there, for you, obviously the transition, you've gone from boys from 10s into girls. What made you make that choice? What then was the pathways given to you at Gillingham and then obviously into Crystal Palace? And can you expand on them a bit more for us, please?
Yeah, I think it was quite similar for me as well, in that I think once you reach the end, well, was when I was 16, then going to women's football, it is quite, you do feel quite isolated because there's not really that many people around you that support you and to go. And I think especially for girls, because not every girls teams, they have like an adult female team to go into. So you kind of have to create the opportunities yourself and contact coaches. But I think also going on each season, it's just the difference of how the women's game is progressing, in that the men's side of the club is becoming more like united, and they are helping with like giving more resources to the female game.
Just thank you, Lydia, for that. Can you just explain so when you, I think it was 10 years old, you said that you went from playing boys teams then into, was it girls teams from 10, 11?
Yeah.
What did that transition look like? And was that something that you chose to do? Was that something that it was a group of you that went, or what made you make that choice that time?
I think I was playing for a school tournament, and then I was approached by one of the Gillingham scouts who said to come along to the trial. And I had been told by other coaches to kind of stay in the boys' game because it would probably help later on if you stay more in the boys' game. But then I found it quite refreshing being around girls who were like similar, and they all had the same goals, and the coaches, they took us seriously as players, because being in the boys' game, it was like you did get a lot of comments like from the sidelines of kind of dads saying, oh, you've just been beaten by a girl and stuff. Whereas being at the centre of excellence, then you were taken more seriously, I think.
Definitely appreciate that. Thank you. I want to, Mark and then Ryan, for this one, I want to delve into it a little bit better in a couple of questions time, just regarding the understanding of how the trust works, how it sits alongside the club, how the ADCs go then into post-16 and women's. I want to delve into that later, just so everyone understands that pathway, because I think listening to the two girls there, even with Lydia, that is, not far off the age we're talking about in that transition from uni into women's, she still had that nervousness at 15, 16 going into the women's game. So it's obviously something that's still really important to get right. And talking to another club the other day, they had exactly the same experiences. So it's something that we all as coaches must see that's got to improve. So if one of you want to start us off and just talk and explain exactly how it sits in with the trust and what support and et cetera, how you need to get where we're talking about.
Right, yeah, I don't mind, Graham. So the pathway at the trust, so the women's team comes under the umbrella of the community trust. So we've got that clear pathway from the ADC through to the women's first team. So our pathway, we start off with just after school clubs, for example. That's where we go and get our talent from, really, is local schools, grassroots clubs. And then they get invitation to we've got a long-term player development centre, which then leads on to our advanced development centre. Our advanced development centre we have under 10s, 12s, 14s and 16s, but this year we are adding an under 11s and an under 15s into that as well, just because the uptake in the women's game and the girls' game is massive now. And now this year we've just added a post-16 education programme in-house at the club, so that's going to be run at Home Park. And again, that's just to give girls more opportunities against better teams around the country. And then that will lead on to the development team and the first team. So how we've sort of looked to do it this year, since myself and Mark have got involved with the senior setup, is that once the girls sort of hit 16 at the ADC, we're sort of inviting them along to not a trial, but 6 weeks worth of training with the development team, so you can get to know the coaches, get to know the players, and sort of taking it from there. So what we're planning on doing is, obviously with Vicky as joint manager of the development team, Vicky's comes along to the ADC, sort of introduce her to the girls, so they've got a friendly face and a familiar face before they attend that session. So it's just having a clear pathway and giving the girls sort of the right opportunity at the right time, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Brilliant. And Mark, how does that work for space and for the training? Because is it done completely separate? Because obviously the trust does lots of things. Is it a separate umbrella that you'll be on different nights, or do you share facilities, or is it something where it's some joined up thinking to make sure that you're not just in a corner? Because the more people I speak to, unfortunately, if they're trying to get girls up and running and boys already there, you seem to find that they get the smaller space, or they get the less time, etc. So how does that fit within the trust, and do you feel that it's something that is equal to the boys that are running alongside you, or would you say that it's more? How would you feel on that?
Yeah, I think we're quite lucky in that sense, because we have our own sort of night on a Wednesday night where it's just OTPD and ADC. So I get what you're saying, and I know a lot of clubs that probably do struggle with that. I mean, we would be the equivalent of the boys' sort of centre of excellence, if you like. So they train on a Friday night from 5:30 till 8:30, 9 o'clock. We pretty much do the same on a Wednesday night. So we've got the whole facility to ourselves. Each age group comes in, they've got their own room to work in. So, we could have 4 age groups. We've got a quarter of a 3G each, of a full size 11-side 3G, sorry. So we're lucky in that sense. And I think that makes a huge difference. I think we would probably struggle as a club to recruit players and to be able to offer the levels of coaching that we offer if we were struggling for facility. So it does play a big part. I'm not saying it's the be all and end all. Facilities are not the be all and end all, but I think it does help in terms of recruiting and keeping the players in the system, because it would be as a coach, I probably wouldn't want to do that if we were got stuck in a quarter of a 3G and there's lots of other teams using it. Then it probably wouldn't be for me, and Ryan would probably be the same. So we are quite lucky in those terms, and I do feel for other clubs that haven't got those facilities.
Definitely. No, it's something that keeps coming up. That's why I wanted to mention it, and I think it sounds great. It sounds like you're getting the full backing that you want and that you deserve. So brilliant so far. I just want to look at the pathway, because looking from what you got here, it caters for some real young girls to come all the way through to hopefully stay at the club. What sort of things do you put in place to try and get that engagement between the kids and the first team? Is there bits that you put on where you try and merge them? Do you get them to games? Do you treat it like an experience on match day for any of them? Is it something that you look to do, guys?
Obviously, this year it's been a bit difficult. Obviously, so we've took over at probably the worst time, really, to try and implement stuff. So we have got plans moving forward to try and integrate the ADC and the women's team a bit more closely. I don't think it has had that joined up thinking previously. I think it's been quite separate, and girls probably didn't get the opportunity sometimes they probably deserve. So our plan moving forward is, obviously we're going to invite the under-16s girls up to train. Obviously we can't join in because of the age gaps, but we will be inviting the ADC girls along to the fixtures. We'll get the under-10s and 12s in as mascots next season. So there will be opportunities so they can have photos with the girls and the players. Don't want photos with me unless I've had a haircut. But yeah, so we are going to try and make it more of a joined up thinking, rather than, which I think helps having obviously myself and Mark full time at the trust and obviously involved with the senior team. So it's sort of from top to bottoms, all the same joined up thinking.
Brilliant, mate. So girls on that front as players, how do how does that sit with you? Do you feel more responsibility you need to engage with the younger ones? Is it something that you've done anyway? Or is it something that as a club now that you need the girls to aspire to you and you play a big part in that, maybe without knowing? What's your thoughts on that, knowing that that's coming up?
I think from when I came through, like I said earlier, there wasn't that connection. And I think Ryan's right in a sense, over the last kind of 5, 6 maybe seasons or so, there hasn't been that link. But from a coach player point of view, what's really nice to see is now that, you know, there is that connection again. And I think it helps having obviously Ryan and Mark coach the under 16s and under 14s coming through, because the girls are now kind of more prepared to step into the women's game. And it keeps kind of the momentum going for them. That, you know, we've got players I could name this season who have come from under 12s and they've worked their way through. You know, we've got success stories in Rosie Train, for example. She's come from under 12s, 14s and 16s. She played 2 games in the development team for me, and now she's in the first team and she's a starting player and she's playing 90 minutes each game. So we've got success stories throughout the club. We've got older success stories in Katie Middleton, for example, who came all the way through, and she's been there even longer than I have. So, you know, I think Plymouth Argyle is the club where young girls really can flourish. And we are very lucky in a sense that we are supported with that pathway.
I forgot I was on mute then. What's your thoughts, Lydia? Is it similar to you? I know, obviously, do you do any coaching, by the way, Lydia?
No, I don't.
No.
Yet.
Okay, that makes it even better then. So based on the fact that it might be different for you to go and engage with players, is it something that you felt was missing when you were younger? Is it something that you want to try and do to just in any capacity to try and encourage younger girls to join in?
Yeah, I think it's really beneficial. And I think I remember when just at the end of when I was at the Centre of Excellence, we did start to train with the first team a bit. And I even remember now players that I kind of looked up to. And I think just being around them, seeing what the atmosphere is in the club, and it really inspires you and makes you want to work hard to try and be in the same position as them. So I think it's always good to have like people to look up to and to try and achieve what they have.
Definitely. And obviously if they see you at the same place, it's actually quite feasible for them to go and do the same, isn't it? Whereas rather than watching on the telly, and that is a big jump, and looking at some of the other girls, this is in their reach, which is great. Brilliant so far. I just want to look at I want to see what your opinions are on what you feel that's still missing massively from the development of female footballers, what your views are that you think could be easy fixes, what your views are that are long-term fixes. I know I'm asking a lot here, but obviously you're in that game, you're in that zone where you've probably got 2, 3, 4 year plans. Hopefully, you know, the position and jobs you're in, that they give you the time to do that, which is different to obviously from other clubs. But for me, what would you say, and I think I'll start with the guys for this one, what would you say based on for you guys coming in the last 4 years, what are the biggest things for you that you think are missing in the development of female players?
Do you want to go first?
Up to you.
Right, you can go.
Go on, Ryan.
Cheers, Mark. Yeah, for me, obviously, I think because as the game's growing, currently it's dual age groups. So for the younger age groups, it's 10s, 12s, so it's dual age groups. So I think moving forward, that needs to change. So it's similar to the boys. I think there's enough girls playing football to have every age group at grassroots level and higher. For me, as a club, our ambition in the next 2 to 4 years would be that we would become an RTC. So we want to become a regional talent club. That is our ambition. We're trying to put the foundations in place now for that to take place and give the girls the same opportunity as the boys. If you look at the boys' academy, for example, they train 3 nights a week. They've got fixture programs on a Sunday, whereas our girls currently train once a week and we play fixtures every half term. So it's not enough for me. But again, that's sort of where our ambition is to get the club moving forward. So that's sort of it really for me with the female game. Same with introducing the post-16 program this year. That was a bit of a lack of an opportunity at Argyle. I think we were missing. We did sort of run a program alongside City College, but it was more recruited by City College. It was sort of anyone can sort of apply, if that makes sense. So we want to make it a bit more bespoke to the sort of players we're looking for to progress from the ADC up into the first team. Like using Rosie as an example again, obviously Rosie's come through at the under 16s and she's pushed on into the first team. That's not always going to happen. So we need to have something in place where girls, if they don't get into the under 23s or the first team at 16, well, how else can we support them and continue their development in the game rather than them just drop out of the ADC at 16 and go off and do whatever? We want to keep building that development of the player.
Definitely. Mark, any bits to add on that?
Yeah, I think from a development point of view, if we're looking sort of outside of, you know, what clubs do, I think more needs to be done in schools. So I think I would like to see, you know, opportunities for girls to be able to play football in school. Now, when I was at school, which was a very long time ago, it was boys did football, rugby, cricket, and girls did netball, hockey, and not much else. Now, I know a few schools are different now, and there are opportunities for girls to play football, but I don't think all schools do it. You know, recently, well, not recently, it must have been, well, it wasn't even last year, was it? It was a year before. I don't even know what year we're in at the minute, but I think it was a year before we went to a school when we put on, myself and Ryan, we just put on a whole day of football basically for anybody that wanted to come along. And to be fair, we weren't expecting many to turn up. And when we got there, the numbers were massive all day long from every year group. And the feedback we got from the girls is they just didn't have the opportunity to play football in school. Now, there's a lot of good clubs, especially in Plymouth. Plymouth's massive. If you look at how many players and how many teams there are in Plymouth, it's huge and it's growing. And like Ryan said, adding the extra age groups will help it. But I think like there needs to be a push. I think especially in secondary schools, there needs to be more of a push towards giving girls opportunity to play football in school, and I think that will make a huge difference.
Definitely, I agree with that. I mean, I'm based in Torbay and in Torquay, and every year when we can play, the primary school teams, they're flooded with girls playing football, and they all play their finals at Playmore, and they all play their games. But it does, to me, seem like they just made a team up, go and play, and then there's not much training afterwards. So I see all those girls, and I think, where do they go afterwards? I think the big thing for me trying to understand is, I look at Torbay and I look at the girls teams, if they're coming from sort of 11 and up. There doesn't seem too many. Obviously, I'm not privy to the information down in Plymouth, but it sounds like there's a few more options down there. But obviously, it's a lot bigger. So for me, I see loads of girls that seem to want to play, and I think it's bridging this gap of how do we do it. We're lucky in the school that I work in at TA that we try and replicate whatever the boys can get, the girls can get, and the problem is then trying to find those games, because not everyone does the same as us. So it's nice to know that it's an issue everywhere else. It's not just in Torbay, but obviously on the flip side of that, it's a crap issue to have, because you want to make sure that they're playing. So no, I appreciate that, and it's got to be surely something else that can be done. Girls, for you, coming through and listening to the bits that you think you could improve, is there anything from a player's point of view that you think it can improve? I'll start with you, Lydia. Is there anything that you think is missing still to this point? More money would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think also just trying to get more coverage and advertising our games would really help, because I think keeping up to date with like our matches and stuff, it's just as exciting as being part of like the men's teams as well. And I think that would also like with most women's clubs, they don't really have access to like the same facilities as the boys do, in like having S&C coaches and access to gyms and stuff that they can use. So I think that would help.
Definitely. Just touching on what you spoke about then, about the facilities and what boys and that get, is that what's your thoughts on, because if we're brutally honest, we're probably now, you've seen it, that the female game is improving very quickly. In my opinion, I might be wrong, but it seems to have gone very quickly the last few years. It's great to see, but do you also think that sometimes that might come at a cost, that people are just trying to do tick boxes now of showing that they're doing something female, but not really paying it too much attention? And obviously, I know it means speaking outside of your club, but there's lots of clubs that I see out there being sort of independent, just seeing what's going on, that it looks great on a Devon FA tick box that, yes, you've got some girls going on, and then the following year that they're not there, because they're probably just not had the opportunities and the structure that's needed. And on top of that, most of the established clubs that have just started with boys, are we back to that situation of then, is there enough facilities? Can they still get what the boys are getting? And is it going to be at the understanding that we might have to chop some of the amount of boys teams to play to get more space, etc.? Because we can't all have access to facilities every night, can we? So what's your thoughts on that, guys?
For me, I think down in Plymouth, especially, I think it is quite, the female game is taken quite seriously, especially at grassroots. And it's trying to build those bridges, I think, for us as well with the local clubs, to try and give the girls the opportunity. That we're not trying to nick their players, because that's not the case. They can play for both Plymouth Argyle and their local grassroots teams all the way up until even if senior level, for again, going back to Rosie, Alice and Caitlin this year, they've all played for their local grassroots team still, whilst playing for us. Depending on the game, obviously it depends if I say they're allowed to or not, but that's sort of how we want it to work. We're just trying to build those bridges. Again, facilities are massive. I think the teams who have got girls teams are able to provide that, and that probably is a reason why there's not more girls teams, because of facilities. But then you see some clubs have got 2 under-8s teams, for example, at boys, but they haven't got an under-8s girls team. Is that something which needs to change? Probably, because there are, like say, girls out there. But I think it's just hard. It's just to keep it sustainable, and just keeping the girls. Again, I think it goes back to what Mark said earlier about lack of opportunity in secondary schools. Maybe might hinder the development. The girls might play up until under 10s, and then they stop because they stop playing in schools. And that almost stigma of playing football, I suppose, as a boys' game, if that sort of makes sense. But yeah, I think there is stuff which needs to improve, both across Devon and Cornwall and the Southwest. I think we are a little bit behind the times down here, and it takes a little while to filter down, but we're getting there. And like I say, that's sort of our jobs, to sort of push on and work with clubs locally.
Brilliant. Vicky, you've been, it sounds like I keep saying it, you've been doing it for a while now, as in you've gone through many different types of female football. You've done the women's, you've done the girls, I'm pretty sure you must have played in boys teams when you come in, and you've been in Plymouth, you've done stuff in Torquay and Torbay. What are the biggest things you've seen change? I know you touched upon some bits earlier, but what are the biggest things that you think that you've seen, and also things that you think are missing, that are glaringly obvious that we don't seem to do?
I would say what's helped the game, obviously, is the coverage, and how, I don't know, like in the last 10 years, women's football is being taken seriously now. And it hadn't been for a long time before that. So I think that has obviously helped the game evolve. I think something that is missing, though, is kind of the consistency between the men's and the women's game. Like, for example, if you look at, obviously, with the pandemic, like tiers 1 and 2 of the women's game were allowed to carry on. But tier 3, which our first team are in, who play teams who are full of professionals, like Watford, for example, they haven't been allowed to carry on. But then you look at the men's game and they've carried on right through to like the National League. So it's just, why is there that gap? You know, why is the inconsistency there? And I think that's what we need to try and stop. And we just need to stop making it about the financial burden. It's not fair that finances are always an obstacle, because we've got teams in that tier, for example, and tier 4 who should still be playing football, but were stopped from doing that because of everything that's happened. So yeah, I think it's just about consistency really across both the men's and the women's game.
Just on that, how do you guys find that with the leagues that you're in? Is there teams out there that are funded very different to others? Is money play a big part?
Yeah, I think finances is massive, especially in the level we're at. Obviously, like Vicky's just touched on, teams like Watford have got huge backing financially, and it is. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It's easier to draw players in of that quality that you need because you can offer financial packages. We don't pay our players. Something we're trying to work on behind the scenes. That's sort of our job as well, to try and bring in funds so we can start paying players, because it's a massive commitment. We're asking girls to travel 12-hour days on a Sunday for free. So the financial burden is massive. We get support from the club in other ways. So, for example, they pay for the first team coach, so we travel by the first team coach, so that's all covered. Training kit's all paid for by the club, so we do. And then obviously in kind, we play a few matches at home park when we're allowed. Obviously, it needs to be beneficial, so we need fans to be in the ground. So there are ways the club do help financially, but again, even to the men's game, I suppose, if you look where Watford are compared to Plymouth Argyle, Watford just dropped out the Prem. Hopefully, well, they're looking to go back up, so their club can probably invest a bit more money that way. Whereas obviously Plymouth Argyle are looking to go up the leagues. Can they invest as much money as that? Probably not. So finances does have a huge implication, but I don't think it is the be all and end all. If you get a good core of players and you've got the right pathway, players are going to stay. We've got players at the club who have stayed this year and who probably could have left and gone and got paid elsewhere. But they've stayed for a reason. Hopefully we've got a couple coming back next season, fingers crossed. So I'm working on that behind the scenes. So, but yeah, no, I think like you say, it is a big issue. But as long as you can go and get backing and sponsors, and I think like Lydia touched on earlier, the media coverage is massive. If you can get it out there and get the club to support that, which sort of we worked this year. Hopefully our highlights are going to be shown on the main club YouTube channel. They've got 105,000 followers, so that's going to hopefully generate the interest in the women's game.
Brilliant. I was going to ask Lydia her opinion actually. So, as a player, Lydia, based on what's just said there, and I know that things have started for the clubs. You know, the men might have been going for a lot longer than the women's, but how does that make you feel as a player when I see teams that are out there playing that they're playing not even near the town or the city that they come from, having to go and play at different venues to get the games on? How does that make you feel as players, or does it bother you, or does it not bother you? You feel that you should be more involved in the club if possible? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think definitely that you do notice it, and it does make you feel kind of not as worthy as you probably should. But I think even in our case, like being able to go on the first team coach to away games, like it seems something small, but it does make you feel much more professional. And compared to last year when we were just going on like 5-hour journeys in a small minibus. But now this year, with having like the first team coach, it definitely does make a difference. You feel more professional, and like you are actually you are being taken seriously as a player.
Brilliant, thank you. And Mark, do you feel it's an awkward one, but do you feel that with all that's being said, do you feel that the club are paying more attention to it now? Do you feel that the club have changed the ways? And I'm not saying that they were intentionally doing it before. It's just obviously, like Vicky said, 10 years it's gone really fast in a good way. Do you feel the club now are bringing the women's team in and the girls team into conversation might not have entered the boardroom before? Do you feel that's a big issue now?
Yeah, I'm not party to anything that went on, you know, previously with the club. Only, you know, things that I've heard, but obviously since I've been at the club, you know, the sort of men's team have been more supportive. There seems to be a growing sort of need to get behind the one club sort of mentality. So, you know, from the first team down to the academy and obviously the ladies team, then it does feel like it's a bit more of a club environment. I think we're a long way away from being anywhere near where the men's first team are. And I think, you know, that's the reality for most women's teams. I think it is growing. I think a worry for me at the minute is, you know, if you look at the men's game, the gap between the top and the next sort of few leagues down is huge. So, you know, we're talking about Premier League and Championship, League One and League Two. The differences is huge, you know, in terms of finances. And I think it started to go that way in the women's game already. And I think like the Women's Super League and the Championship, I think, you know, season after season, I think they'll start to move further and further away because of the finances that are involved. Teams will be desperate to get into that, into the top tier and stay in that top tier, same as the men's game. So I think, you know, that might be a concern for clubs going forward. I think in terms of, you know, the gap that's going to grow between, you know, National League teams like ourselves, who financially, you know, we're okay, but we're not competing with any of the top teams that Ryan and the girls have spoken about. But I think the gap will get bigger. I think more money will get pumped into the top end, same as the men's game, and sort of anything below that, they'll be fighting and struggling to sort of get to that level. So I think that is a worry for everybody. I think not just us as a club, but yeah, I think, you know, we've put together a 5-year plan or a 4-year plan. We've changed it to now. You know, something that we're going to be speaking to the club about, hopefully in the near future. You know, we've got our own plans, we've got our own ambitions. From what I've heard, the club are going to be supportive of certain things with us going forward. We haven't actually sat down with the club and, you know, listened to both sides of the story yet, but that's something that we're hoping to do soon. But yeah, I'm hoping that in the next sort of, you know, I know it's not going to happen next season, but maybe in the next 2 or 3 seasons, as time goes on, little pieces and little details will get added to what we're doing, which will join up more with the club, and then hopefully be able to, you know, help us sort of push on a little bit, you know. But I think we've got to walk before we can run. I think, you know, it's easy for us to go to the club and go, we want this, we want that, we need this, we need that. But actually, there's a lot that needs to be done first. So we've got to build those foundations. So, you know, everything we're doing at the ADC with the under-23s, the first team, you know, the things that we've got planned and things that we're doing now are going to be important for 2, 3, 4 years time, when hopefully things will change for us.
Brilliant. I think that's the worry, isn't it? Is that any good club's going to have a 3, 4, 5-year plan, and the more people that are doing great work, getting the younger girls playing, the last thing you want is for that gap to come bigger and bigger, where you can't even get clubs to carry on because the money's not there because the golf's too big. So hopefully it doesn't turn that way. But yeah, you're probably right. 1 or 2 are probably running away with it, and they brilliant. Just wanted to touch on just going back to the post 16 and Vicky for the development. We were talking the other day to another club about not having a development team, and then the problems that brings when they get to 16. And similar to you guys, I run a post 16 girls who've been going 2 years here at TA, and we've got a very different mix of girls. But some of our better girls trying to get into the women's team is such a big jump. And I don't think the girls appreciate it, because I think sometimes they just haven't been in that environment, and they think they can go and play, and you're trying to say to them that it's probably not quite there yet, but you also want them to be in and around it. But also, because they're young, sometimes they don't want to go and sit on a bench. You want to go and find a lower level and play. So it's really difficult if you haven't got that middle ground. So if you guys can talk a little bit more about your plans for the post 16 and development, and how important that is for clubs, that'd be great.
Yeah, no worries. I'll go again, Chris. That's fine. Yeah, so the post 16 program, like I said earlier, is sort of to bridge that gap, to try and prevent players from just going off the radar to a certain degree. It's vitally important for players' development. There's not going to, like I said, there's not going to be everyone who's going to be able to jump into the development team or the first team. We're quite lucky with ourselves being obviously an EFL club, that we go and play in a Wednesday league, which is the EFL Football Alliance League. So it's like a post-16 programme with other professional football clubs. So we've got teams like Burton Albion, Nottingham Forest, Derby, Swindon, teams like that in our league. So it gives the girls opportunities to get used to that sort of distance you've got to travel, being down in the southwest. Obviously, it's a lot to ask, so they get used to the travelling side of things. Becomes a bit more professional. They won't have the luxury of sitting on the first team coach. They'll be on the minibus, unfortunately, but that's just the life. But I think it's vitally important for the development of the club, that post-16 programme, that we get it off and running and keep the sort of quality at the club. We have got girls who will bypass that straight away, and probably in the next 2 or 3 years, we've got players at our under 16s who are playing for England. We've got a girl at our under 14s playing for England. So if they keep developing, obviously they might bypass and jump straight into the first team or the under 23s. But just sort of having that extra pathway for those late developers to a certain degree. We don't want to write players off and go, well, actually, we're not going to offer you anything after 16, because they might develop into better players as they get older.
Brilliant. And for you, Vicky, like, how do you make sure that, because it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you're going to have people that are going to leapfrog you and go straight into the first team, like Ryan said. You're going to have girls that maybe aren't ready, but also you're going to, I take it that you can't just bring all your 16s in, or most of the 16s in every year, because then what do you do with the ones that were there previously? So it's a tough balancing act. So how are you looking to do that?
I think, like, naturally in the game, players will move on. They want to explore different avenues. But I think with our youngsters that are coming through, I think we're quite lucky at this club that they feel comfortable, they feel happy, and they feel content that they are ready to step up into the kind of the women's game. Obviously, there are players who aren't physically as good or ready, and they will kind of be nurtured and kind of looked after in the development team by myself and the other coaches that work with them. And you know, for us, and Ryan can kind of will agree with this, for us, it's not about winning games as such. It's about the players' development. You know, they need to learn. You know, it's good to lose games sometimes for their point of view, because actually you're going to learn more from a defeat. And it's, for me personally, working with some of the girls this year, it's been more important about working with their mental development and how they kind of react and respond to a loss or a bad tackle or a bad pass, rather than, oh, we lost a game, that means we're rubbish. It's kind of just getting that mentality into them. So yeah, you'll have the players that aren't quite ready for the first team, that do need a bit more kind of TLC, and that's really kind of my role and what I kind of help with, I guess. So yeah, it seems to work. We're, like I say, we're quite lucky with how our 15s, 16s come through, and they are ready for that next step.
Just to touch on that, Chris, if you don't mind me jumping in, we have, like, Mark's worked quite hard behind the scenes lately doing individual development plans. Obviously, Mark's the lead coach at our 16s. So the plan moving forward is when the 16s move up to the development team with Vicky and the other coaches, that Mark will pass on the information about the players' strengths, weaknesses, what they need to work on, sort of their mentality, what they're like as a person. So again, that helps the pathway. So obviously, myself and Mark will work with the girls from the age of 13 up to 16. So we sort of know them as a person as well. It's not just as a footballer. So we sort of know we've got certain girls who are shy. We've got girls who would go in and just be fine. We know that. So it's just having that individual development plan so the coaches get to know a bit about the player before they go up there, which is also going to help.
Definitely, from the bits that I've done in the last few years, that age is difficult anyway. There's a lot of things going on, and yeah, you expect them to just step into women's and think that it's similar, but they're very anxious, a lot of them, and a friendly phase is massively beneficial. Like you said, there's no point just having 4 or 5 years of great work underneath if you're not going to share that and pass the information on. Lydia, from your point of view, and I'll ask you as a player rather than the coaches, but does that go the other way as well? So if you got injuries, do the girls drop down? Do they play in the development so then the girls can have a chance to play alongside first team players?
Yeah, I think when I was 16 and playing for Crystal Palace, they were going for promotion into the Championship that season, and I think whilst I was only getting like 5 minutes each game, training with them twice a week, and there was like international players, that was probably the season that I made the most progress. So I think, and also this season at Plymouth, using Rosie as an example, again, you can just tell from every time that she's played with us, she's just more and more confident. And at the start was quite nervous, but now seems to like really enjoy playing, and you can tell she's much more relaxed and getting involved with the girls. So I think it is important to slowly introduce girls once they're 16 into the first team and not put them straight into that environment, but also to recognise like the importance of doing that early, just so they get a feel for the game.
Surely as well, you want to play, don't you, as well? So yes, it's great experience wise, but I can imagine it starts to do your head in if you keep going there and know you're never going to come on because it's experience. I get there's a part of that, and you've got to be in a change room, you've got to see what's going on. But if you see your mate who's not getting that experience but playing every week and coming back with stories of what they've done, you got that side to it as well. So it's a fine balance. And do you feel for Mark and Ryan and Vicky, do you feel that is there transition between the teams for training and that, just to see the difference for the girls to take it on board, the level of development up to first team?
Yeah, so this year we've obviously, with what went on in the summer at the club, there was a big transition and a big change at the club. So there has been a lot more opportunities for players to come up and go across to the development team, because we took over late in the summer, so we didn't really have a full pre-season. We didn't know what our strongest squads were. So we've sort of done a lot of chopping and changing. It's difficult for the other way for the girls. For example, say Lydia's played 6 games for me in our league. She's not allowed to then go and play in the development league. So it becomes an issue. It's quite hard. So if Lydia went and got injured and was out for 3 months, for us, we would like her to go and get fit, match fit, play a couple of games, ease her back in, but we can't because of the league, unless she's only played less than 4 games. So that is a massive problem, because we've got, for example, Amber's out. Amber's been out. She's done her ACL, set her up, and we're hoping she'll be eased back in pre-season. But we wouldn't want to throw her in the deep end just coming back from that op. We'd want her to get match fit and get back into playing football. But obviously she's a first team player, and when she's fit, if she goes up and she struggles and she plays 4, and it doesn't mean they've got to start 4 games. It means if they play, just say they come on and we bring them on for 5 minutes a game and they've played 4 games, that's classed as 4 games and not allowed to play for the development team. And
wow, that's quite frustrating, isn't it?
It is quite annoying for us, especially like say if you pick up injuries, which you're going to throughout the season, and you want to get.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'll just jump in. The thing is, because that league is a competitive league, and there are clubs with first teams in that league, whereas we've got our development team in there. It's those teams are on a totally different wavelength to us, because obviously, a development team is to exactly what it says on the tin, is to develop the players and give them opportunities. But you're playing against other senior teams who that's not on their agenda. They're there to win. They're playing in the league, they're competitive. So you can see it from a league's point of view why they won't allow players from high levels to come down and play if they've played a certain amount of games. But that is a frustrating thing for us, because it does become restrictive. Then we can only sign a certain amount of players down. And like Ryan said, if they get injured and they need game time, we're stuck because there's nowhere for them to go. We're better off sending them to another club to sign for another team and play for them. Do you know what I mean? So that they can get that game time. But it's just something that we've got to deal with, I suppose.
Yeah, it's not ideal, is it? Because that'd be perfect, wouldn't it, being able to drop?
I think the leagues look at it as, you could have a big game to a certain degree, for example, because, like you say, it's not about results, but we want our development team to compete in the league they're in. But it might come down to a game, for example, say that they're playing against top of the table, their second decides in the league. I think the league have done it to stop us thinking, well, actually, we'll go and chuck our first team out and win that game and win the league. But that's not what we're about. That's it's a bit.
I suppose it's for the other teams as well, isn't it? The ones that, like you said, have got their first teams in that league, they want to maybe progress. It might be that you've got 3 or 4 injured bodies. I get that they might come and play. That means that they lose that game. It might stop them going up. So yeah. I suppose there's always some grey areas, isn't there? So,
but I think with the development team as well, like sort of what the way we might be able to do it is obviously depending on ages. The post-16 program is 16 to 19. So if they're under the bracket, they might be able to ease back in on the Wednesday fixtures. With it being joined up, that might be a way we can look at it moving forward. But again, as the girls get older, we won't be able to do that. So we've got quite a young squad. It's all right at the minute, but once Lydia gets to 30, which is a few years away yet, Lydia, 9 years away yet, but we won't be able to do that then.
Brilliant stuff. Awesome, guys. I got a couple bits that I want to just delve into here. So it's been amazing so far. I appreciate all the experiences and all the information. It's good, and for me, I'm learning all the time as well, and hopefully people listening are picking up bits. I've put here, because obviously money's the big one, I've put here, apart from money, what one thing would you like to see happen in the future for female games? So if you Magic One style, take money out of the equation, what would you all want to see happen to improve the game? Actually, I'm going to take away the other bit that a lot of you said, which is getting it out there and the sort of the advertisement of it all. Put you under pressure now.
I'll start just so my idea don't get nicked. Get out there early. So for me, I think there's massive opportunity, obviously, with the women's game growing, for the National League to look at the structure of the leagues. I think there's an opportunity to expand leagues and give more teams the opportunity who want to push on. So, for example, if you look at the WSL and the Championship, there's only 12 teams in that league. And if you go in just our league, there's probably 3 or 4 teams who want to go up to that league this season. Already now, that's our ambition in the next 4 years. We want to get pushing on to look at the Championship level. So is there a way they could expand the leagues, maybe up the WSL to 16, the Championship to 16s, and then the southern and northern sections of Tier 3 merged together, so it's a bit more of a competitive league? And that's sort of what I would like to see. And again, just have that same sort of respect for the teams lower down in the tiers. Obviously, like Mark alluded on earlier, the gap, we don't want that gap becoming too big. And I think by a restructure of the leagues, which I think will happen eventually, that will help that. So that's where I want it to go.
Brilliant, mate. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I'll go. I think, yeah, if we're talking about anything but money, I think there could be more done to help clubs in like lower leagues, so like National League clubs and stuff that haven't got big budgets, how they can best sort of use their resources they've got. So, you know, we haven't got a player budget and we haven't got a lot of money, but we found ways to get around that. So, you know, we've brought in analysis, doesn't cost us anything, you know, extra S&C sessions, you know, we've helped players with their diets, you know, we've done extra stuff sort of that we wouldn't be doing if we were at a WSL club. There'd be, you know, a whole selection of staff to do that for us. We haven't got that luxury. So I think, you know, for the, you know, maybe for the FA or the powers that be, they could go in and work with clubs and coaches and just give them a little bit of education, a little bit of support about stuff that they can do without having to spend money, if that makes sense.
I'm just very quickly touch on that. How much, depending on the scope in it, how much do you feel you get from the local FA support wise?
No comment.
Yeah, to be fair, we've had a conversation about this week about something related to this, but I don't want to go too much into it. But yeah, in terms of actually, that, you know, we do get a lot of support as coaches because we're working with Tash Mills at High Performance Centre, which is based at Marjons. Obviously, that's a national thing. That's not a local or regional thing. So I can't say we don't get any support in terms of sort of coaching and coach education and learning and stuff, because we do get that. In terms of support from county FAs and local FAs to the club, I don't actually know that. You know, obviously that's a conversation to have with the people in charge at the club. But yeah, it's just I think they could probably do more at all levels, not just in the women's game. I think at all levels. But you know, I do understand that hands are tied, and you know, certain things are in fashion one season, certain things are out of fashion. They get allocated a certain amount of money to do things, which might not cover everything. So I do understand that, and it is quite political. But yeah, we're quite lucky in a sense that we do get a bit of support from the FA through the Women's High Performance Centre. To be fair, if that wasn't there, how much support would we get? I don't know. But again, that's down to individual coaches. You know, if you're always reliant on county FAs and national FAs and stuff to help you with your education and, you know, to upskill you, then I don't think you're helping yourself. I think you have to do your own stuff. You know, you have to get yourself educated. You have to get that experience. So I wouldn't like to put too much pressure on the county FAs, because I know their hands are tied with certain things. But on the other hand, I would like to see them maybe do a little bit more in certain areas.
I'll just touch on that, Mark. Obviously, I work quite closely with Devon FA within the role I do at the club. So we have got a good relationship with Devon FA. Certain things clash, which is inevitable when you're working with two organisations. But they are supportive. We're trying to build out a relationship again. I don't think it's been as healthy as it can be over the past few years. And we're building that now. Again, it takes a bit of time. We've also got support from the regional talent scout for the England setup. So Sarah Law is the regional talent scout for the Southwest. I personally have got a really good relationship with Sarah. She's always on the phone if I need her or ask for advice. Obviously, she was the manager at Yeovil when they went up to the WSL. So I've got a really good relationship with her. Again, coach-wise, myself and Mark get on really well with Darren Way, who's the under-18s coach at Argyle. He's open and honest, coaching-wise. He'll come in. We'll go and watch the under-18s quite a lot, myself and Mark. We're going to go down there tomorrow, actually, to watch them play their last league game. And again, Darren's open and transparent with all he does at the club as well. So we have got quite a good network down in Plymouth. But like you say, support FA-wise, I think it's as good as it can be. I think the Devon FA, they need to support all the clubs locally a little bit more. But that's another conversation, I suppose.
Yeah, sometimes I'd like to live in Somerset, but I won't say that.
To be fair, I think there is conflict across the country. It's not just down here. I think it's the thing with especially the female game is obviously you've got ADCs and you've got ACCs and stuff like that. So the pathway is playing for your county to go into the England setup, but that again, you limited it for 2 or 3 girls, whereas I suppose ourselves, Exeter, Buckland, we're not looking at those 2 or 3 girls. No. We're looking at the wider picture.
Definitely. Girls, who wants to go first?
They haven't left us anything really, have they?
No, come on, you'll have loads. Come on.
I'm joking. Right, if I was to look at it from 2 different points of view, like from a coach point of view and from like a lover of the game, like as a player and a lover of the women's game, like I would obviously like to see kind of bigger attendances, kind of more of a scope of coverage like on live TV and things like that. You know, I know there are some games on there, but it tends to just be tier 1 and tier 2. So why isn't there a way that, you know, tier 3 teams, tier 4 teams can be kind of published within the local, you know, like BBC Devon or like Radio Devon or whatever? Why can we not get more coverage for the female game locally? And then from like a coach point of view, I think Mark's touched on it really, like with the education wise, like can we maybe educate clubs more? Like we're very lucky that we work with Tash Mills and we've got that, like as a coach, like I want to go in to do my B license, and Tash is working with me from that point of view. And you know, I know she's worked with previous coaches that we've had, and I just think it'd be nice to have all across Devon and all across the county and Southwest in general, more opportunities for coaches, male and female, to develop the women's game further.
Brilliant. Lydia, final one.
I think maybe firstly that rather than splitting into girls and boys at such a young age, maybe to carry on with boys and girls playing together up until I think it's about 15 that you're allowed to. So having more clubs that are a mix of girls and boys, because I think this would help with like the girls' developments and making them more like athletes, and rather than seeing it as kind of like two, because I think when you split it into girls and boys, girls are always going to see it as like, oh, the boys teams are better. And just encouraging girls, I think they're doing it more now, but girls teams play against boys teams. And then the second thing, I think I think especially in Plymouth and Devon, maybe like a lot of people don't know about our women's first team. So trying to do more things in the community to get us more people more to know about us and want to come and watch our matches.
Brilliant, mate. I just really want to quickly ask.
I'm glad Lydia said that, because guess what we're doing next year, Lydia?
You'll be doing lots of guest appearances.
Yeah.
Lydia, really quickly, because I've only got one more and I appreciate I've taken a lot of your time. On that bit about playing, do you think the leagues should be a bit more flexible if the girls are playing against boys, as in physicality? Would it be disrespectful to play you a year down, maybe? Or do you think that will go against what you're trying to achieve?
Well, I think it is known that boys are physiologically different. They are stronger. So I don't think if I was to be a girl playing against boys that are a year younger, I don't think that would necessarily bother me. And I just think you should be matched more physiologically, maybe rather than age. And it would just help to improve your game as an athlete.
So that's something ideally the leagues could be a bit more flexible on, potentially.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Chris, can I just jump in there 2 seconds? Just touching on what Lydia said about the girls playing in boys teams. Fully support that. I still run my boys local DGM team, so and we've got 2 girls who play in our team. One of them has been with us from the age of 9. One joined this season. So I think it is more common now, and the advice we try and give to our girls at the ADC is, if you can, go and play boys football. A lot of them do, to be honest, especially the better players. They play in either in a boys team, or there's a girls team who actually play in a boys league. And they've done quite well over the years. Even at the ADC, when we try and add fixtures, we've added games against the boys, just because it is a test. So if we look at our under 14s, we've played 2 fixtures this year, for example, against girls teams. I won't name who they're against, and they've been comfortable and it's been too easy. Whereas we've played 2 local boys teams and they've both been challenging, and it's pushed the girls a lot more. And we've probably got more out of those games than probably we have in the fixtures against the girls, because it was a bit one-sided. I mean, I think Mark would say the same with the 16s. I think it's been exactly the same. I think both games for 16s have won comfortably, but they've played 2 boys teams and they've been both competitive games. And we've done that with I think with the under 16s, the first game they played was against an under 14s top league boys side. A lot of our girls at under 16s are 15, but it was sort of bridges that gap, like playing down physically, they competed. Whereas if they played an under 16s team, it probably wouldn't be the same.
I think it makes sense personally, but it's making sure that the leagues aren't going to stop you doing that. And it'd be great to have it as a league rather than having to do these friendlies, wouldn't it?
I don't think the league would ever bring it in as a rule, if I'm honest, but that's sort of, again, it's a shame, but I don't think they would.
Also, a final one, and this is, you can go wherever you want with this. Based on what this is, which is the Future Player podcast at the minute, I want to know what your thoughts are, what a female player looks like in 10 years.
Go first. I won't go first this time.
Should we go back to front? Lydia,
go on, Lydia, you can start.
I think they would be more like athletes. I think at the moment, a lot of female players, you can be at a high level and they've never really done any strength and conditioning, or are not particularly athletic. So I think, which obviously is very different to the men's games. I mean, there's probably not many male players that aren't athletic and have really high levels of fitness and strength. So I think that's definitely an area of women's football that I think will probably get a lot more competitive, and it'll be a lot more down to how, like, your fitness and that side of things, rather than just technical football ability.
Brilliant. Vicky, over to you.
Yeah, I would kind of back that up, Lids, to be honest. I think obviously I've seen the game evolve over the last 20 years and I've seen that in practice. So I've seen players kind of play and have that fitness level. And whereas now, like even with the young girls we've got coming through, they are just a different level compared to what the girls at my age when I was coming through. So I think in 10 years' time, that's going to be even kind of more exaggerated and more obvious. You know, they're going to be fitter, they're going to have more available to them, the strength and conditioning, like you've said, and they're just going to have more available to them. So they're going to be better athletes. I think their awareness of the game will be much better. I think they'll probably be more psychologically prepared for the game. They will have experienced a lot more change, and you know, they might have experienced failure, and they'll be more aware of how important mentality is and attitude and how they apply it, because of everything that's now available to them that perhaps wasn't 10, 20 years ago.
Great stuff. Thank you. Over to the lads. It's Mark, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, I can't disagree with the girls. I think the athletic side of it is gonna change, and like Vicky said, it already has changed. I think it's not a case of in 10 years' time they're going to be more athletic. I think they already are now, and again, it's only going to get stronger. I think players. So if I from my experience coaching senior players recently over the last few years, what I have noticed is that there's a big gap in terms of game understanding. So a lot of that, I'm not saying it's all down to coaching, but I think there are players who are potentially in their mid to late 20s who have never experienced any sort of coaching at all. And I've experienced that firsthand, whereas you've got players who are 13, 14, who probably understand the game a little bit better than the senior players. And that's no disrespect to the senior players, but they just haven't had that contact or opportunity to have any coaching. I think the players are going to be younger at a senior age. I think you're going to see a lot more 16, 17, 18-year-olds on team sheets than you are now, because I think they're just going to be ready when they get to that age. In 10 years' time, I think they're going to be more confident. They've played a lot more. They understand the game a lot more. I think it's going to be more accepted. It's, you know, the acceptance is there for female players in the game now, but I think in 10 years' time, the way it's going now, it's going to be a totally different level. So I think the players are going to be more confident in themselves. So yeah, look, you know, there's only one way it's going at the minute, and that's up.
Brilliant. If you had another 10 years of the 10 years that just happened, surely there's a lot that's going to change again, isn't it? So brilliant.
Absolutely.
Ryan, final one, right?
Yeah, I think they've touched everything. So I did make some notes, and the notes I put down were mentality, attitude, commitment, technically sound, game understanding and confidence, which I think everyone's sort of touched on. I think technical ability of the players coming through in the next 5-6 years is unbelievable. Some of the girls can do stuff I could only dream of at 14. It's unreal what they can do, and like I say, we try and push them. But I think massive for me is the top three. The first three I said was the mentality, attitude, and commitment. And even this year, we've sort of seen who's willing to put the effort in, who's got the right attitude, who's committed, and sort of we will filter out players at this club who won't fit those categories. But I think that's going to be really important. I think over the years, your technical ability has got you as far as it can to a certain level, I think, but that opportunity is going to stop soon, and you're going to have a mentality and attitude and a commitment, which is your football's going to have to become your life, a bit like you do at the boys' academy to a certain degree. If you want to make it into the professional game in the men's, it's difficult, and I think it's going to become more difficult in the female game to make it at the top level. So your mentality is going to have to be there to be able to make it.
Fantastic, guys. Spot on. Brilliant. Before we leave, is there anything that anyone wants to leave us with? Any bits that you feel we might not have covered? I've taken up a lot of your time, which I appreciate, by the way, but it's been amazing. I've covered everything I wanted to cover. There's so much. I've got to be careful because I love a chat. So I've got to be careful that I don't veer off too much, because there's lots of things that I'm writing down on my bit of paper here that I'm like, oh, I'd like to delve a bit more into that, but we'll probably still be here at 9 o'clock. So I wanted to stick to as close to the hour. I've gone a bit over again like I did the other night. So is there anything that you want to say or end with? Just checking. Or
I think we've covered most of it, but
Good.
thanks for putting this on and really appreciate it.
No, it's brilliant. I really appreciate your time. I try and get this out in the next couple of days once I get my editing skills a bit better. But thanks from me. It's been brilliant. Hopefully I'm going to see some people face to face soon. There's a lot of this Zoom and it's great, but I miss the face to face and getting out on the turf. So hopefully I can come and watch some games soon, and it'd be great to see you all again. Thank you, guys.
Cheers,
Take care.
Thanks, Chris.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.